Hello, it's Russell here from Beehive NZ. We're here to share some results of research and also to share some feedback from many commercial beekeepers in New Zealand, which we have a lot of contact with. I'm a beekeeper myself and love working with bees, experimenting with bees. We do a lot of experimentation with Varroa control, and some of those things we want to share today. I started beekeeping in the early 80s when I was still at school, and really as a hobbyist, and then more seriously in the last 6-7 years, especially with Varroa control. So what's become very apparent over the last 12 months is a lot of feedback saying, hey, strips aren't working like they used to. And so we've obviously looked at a lot of scenarios, a lot of situations, a lot of products. And I just want to share some of that. So we'll start off looking at the colony loss survey, which is all on the internet, and this is just a part of it for your interest if you haven't seen it. One of the main things to look at is losses attributed to Varroa. And as you can see there, it's been quite a rapid increase in each year. So 5.3% of all colonies in New Zealand died over winter attributed to Varroa issues. You see here, suspected Varroa, out of all the losses, 38% of the losses, or 38.9, is attributed to Varroa issues. It used to be 16.9. The big one used to be queen issues, but that's gone back to 24, but Varroa has jumped up. Wasps are still serious at 12%, still something that needs to be considered. Professor Phil Lester in recent times has done quite a in-depth study of looking for resistance in the Varroa mite population to synthetic chemicals. And as you can see here, laboratories studies show that there is resistance to the Varroa chemical in the Varroa mite population. The tests show that it took 5 to 10 times as much Varroa chemical to kill the mites now as compared to 20 years ago. Now that full report is due to be published this month. He shared some of that information with us at the Christchurch National Conference in June. It'll be interesting to see more of it. So that brings us to the key topic we want to talk about today is oxalic acid. A lot of the reports we've had from beekeepers is that Varroa is not working like it used to, and that would tie up with Professor Phil Lester's research. So over the last 5 years we've done a lot of work with oxalic acid. First started with vaporizers. 4 years ago I started with the jib paper staples, and then the last 2 or 3 years we've been playing with our cardboard strips. So we came up with this cardboard strip, which is an awesome vector for soaking up the oxalic acid and glycerine solution. It has got the recesses crimped in here, which makes it easy to bend 90 degrees. And that strip weighs 11 grams, made in New Zealand from food grade pulp, fully biodegradable, and it'll soak up around 23 to 24 grams of solution. Talking about oxalic acid, it's obviously a natural product. It's in a lot of food, as you can see, fruits, nuts, seeds, spinach. And it's used in 3 ways to kill Varroa mites. So you can be soaked with glycerine, soaked into the cardboard strips, we'll go into that more soon, by sublimation, it's commonly used called vaporizers. The dribble method is still used by some beekeepers. It's not one that I enjoy using myself. because this is so much easier and so much easier on the bees. If we look at the legal side of it, MPI have on their website the rules for own use guidance for compounds and beehives, and on section 4 here we've got the own use rules. There's an exemption when the beekeeper prepares the substances himself, including oxalic acid. We also have worked in with Randy Oliver, who is a world-renowned scientist or biologist from California, very well respected worldwide, and spends all his time, full-time, doing research and analysis and data studies. Last year he trialled some of our cardboard strips in hives over there, and he soaked them 1 to 1.5, so that's 40% oxalic acid solution, 60% glycerine, and he left them in the hive for 77 days, and mite counts were measured before and after. So the end result was, with our cardboard strips, he calls them chipboard strips, there was a 90% reduction with that 40% solution. On his maximizer strips with the 40% solution, it only got 82% reduction. When he used the maximizer strips at 50% oxalic, he got a 97% reduction. So we were all pretty happy with the 90%, but we would like to do a little bit more research with oxalic at 50% to see if we get the increased results like he did. There's some data from one of the tests that I did that was in a hive that had been collected as a swarm in October. Had no record of any mite control done in the hive. I knew it had a lot of mites because we're getting a lot of natural drop out the bottom. You can see the data here that Thursday lunchtime fitted, it was a double brood. I fitted 8 staples to it, 4 in the bottom, 4 in the top box, and did a count every approximately 12 hours. And as you can see, from Thursday lunchtime, the Saturday morning count was the big one with 368 mites. And that's what 368 mites on the tray underneath the vented floor looks like. Now that just shows also that the oxalic acid is, it's not an instant killer like within a few hours. It takes a little bit of time to work around the hive. And whatever it does to the mites to kill them, no one's 100% sure. It does take a little bit of time because it's a contact killer, it's not a fumigant. Positioning in the hives is very important. They must be straight through the middle in the brood nest. They must be at brood temperature. At 34 degrees, the glycerine and acid solution is liquid. And what happens, the bees walk on the surface and carry the solution all around the beehive. And it gets used up on the surface, and so you want more solution to flow to the outside. So the glycerine is like the carrier. So if the strips are on the outskirts and they get cold, it'll go like a solid and it will not work. So in a normal full depth brood box, if I've got a feeder in there, 3 strips is normally enough. But if it's full depth and it's got 8 frames of brood and it's chock-a-block full of bees, I would put 4 strips in, just every second frame like that. We find with mapping results that the efficacy starts to dissipate at 7 weeks, but the acid keeps flowing to the surface very effectively for up to 7 weeks. So we would replace the strips. On our hives we don't use anything else, so we replace the strips between every 6 and 9 weeks depending on the cool cycle rotations. It's interesting, some bees will chew the strips quite fast, so at 5 weeks there's not a whole lot left. Other bees don't hardly chew them at all. It's like a personality thing. We don't really know why there's a variation there. So this is a video of just opening up a hive that's got strips in it. That hive there, 2 months ago I split another hive off it. I split it in half. It's built up pretty good since then. It was 20 days ago that I put the strips in it, and then it was really like a 6-frame brood box. But they've built up a lot since then, so they're due for another strip in there. I have 3, but they're doing very well, very healthy. That hive's been going for 20 months, and it's never had anything else for Varroa control but the Oxalic Acid strips. Nice healthy brood, bees are happy, they're fat, doing very well, and there's no deformed wings. I don't even have to think about Varroa issues. Some of the feedback we get from beekeepers is that after they've been using the oxalic acid only, nothing else, for like 12 months, the bees give them the sense that they are healthier, and there's like a hypothesis out there that does it help control viruses as well as Varroa. We don't know, but I've been talking to senior old beekeepers, a lot of experience, and that's the sort of feedback they've been giving me, that they think the bees are healthier than they've ever been before. It's really awesome to see it. So you can see a little bit of mining where the strip's been. So you will get a bit of that, often only on one side where the strip's been, but it doesn't stop the queen walking over it, going under it, and laying both sides. You can see there that after 20 days the strip has been chewed a bit around the edges, a little bit feathered there. But it's still got that damp look, so it's still glycerine flowing to the surface. One of the trials we did involved some of our research hives which were on the other side of this building, next to an orchard, facing north, nice spot. And we got a hive that had a lot of mites in it, and I knew that there was going to get a lot of mite drop. But anyway, after putting 8 strips into it, the next morning there was 300 dead bees on the concrete on this side of the building under this security light. And it was a wee bit sort of perplexing as to why that happened, because it hadn't happened before. And a week later, I put some strips into another hive that had a lot of mites, and the same thing happened the next morning. We had 300 dead bees on the concrete here. So a week later, I did another hive that had synthetic strips in it, had Varroa in it. It didn't have any mites. We'd done a count. This was 4 years ago, and the next morning there was like 6 dead bees on the concrete. And what it's proved to us is that when you put the strips into a hive, if there's a lot of wounded bees, if you've got high mite loads and there's a lot of wounded bees, the acid getting carried around the hive, it's like, for you and me, it's like salt in a cut. It's very painful. And that night, the bees that are wounded and are in pain, it appears they fly out, and if they see a light, they go for it, and then they don't make it back to the hive. So if the hive does have a high mite load, we don't recommend putting the oxalic strips in. It's a contact killer to the mites. A vaporizer is putting a gas in there. It's actually more gentle. The particles are a lot smaller, So that is a better option, or synthetics if they are still working for you. So the idea is to get the mite levels down, get the bees as healthy as you can. You then start the oxalic strips and you get fantastic results. They can be used from there ever after. We do a range of packages to make it easy. This is just a little hobbyist package which comes with about 170 strips. It's pretty cheap and very simple to make up. It's all the bits and pieces there. And then there's more commercial packages, right up to packages with 20,000 strips. For the commercial packages, it includes these soaker racks, which you put 80 strips in each of these slots. So that means each rack will take 480 strips. Very simple for you to do it yourself. It's got these little plates that go across, which you put blocks on to hold them down, stop them floating when you put the solution in. The easiest way to do a brew is with these jacketed heater tanks. They are something that are also in our lineup and good value for money. They've got a thermostat, so you can keep the solution in the tank at a set temperature. It's very important that the oxalic acid doesn't go over 60 degrees Celsius because it starts changing in its chemistry, can start changing to formic acid. So with that system, with the thermostat, you can actually set it and leave it. And I know some beekeepers actually at night after work, they'll put in 1.5 jerry cans of glycerine, a whole bag of acid. That gives you the exact 60%, 40% solution. Turn it on. The next morning, a fair bit of it has dissolved. There's just about that much oxalic in the bottom to stir up, and it mixes up very quick, ready to use. So when the solution when everything's mixed, it goes clear, just like doing sugar syrup. And we've got instructions that covers all this. You can pour it straight out the valve into the soaker rack, and you fill it up pretty close to the top to flood all the strips. I've got a couple of blocks of wood going onto those aluminium strips and a bit of weight to just hold everything down in the solution. That's left like that for 24 hours. In 24 hours, the strips will soak up around 23 grams of solution, and they'll double in thickness. So that's what they look like after 24 hours when you pull the rack out. They have gone from this height pretty close to the top. And each strip will weigh around 34 grams. Quite a few customers put them in a vacuum pack bag and do packs of 80 like that, seal them up. It's best not to vacuum them tight because they can, after packing, continue to expand a bit, and you don't want them to all stick together. So it's best to leave the bag a wee bit loose and just seal the ends. Storage, they can be stored. I've used strips that are 9 months old and they still were very effective on my beehives. The acid will tend to crystallise a bit and they look a bit sort of crystally, but that doesn't matter. As soon as it gets into the brood box, brood temperature, 34 degrees, the crystals melt and it just all goes back to a liquid. It all runs perfectly. So a few key points. Oxalic acid is exempt from the requirement of an MRL. It's in government rules. There's nothing in New Zealand law that specifically states that OA cannot be used for Varroa control while honey supers are present. Oxalic acid is naturally present in all honeys with a very wide range of variation from one honey type to another. The best mix ratio is 40% oxalic is what we're doing at the moment. We may trial some 50% ones, but 40% is a good, safe way to go at the moment. A hive with high mite loadings and lots of wounded bees, we've talked about that. You'll get some bee mortality. They do bounce back quick, but in the first few weeks you will get bee numbers reducing before they build up again. If maximum bee numbers are the issue, like spring build-up, it's best to use add the strips to the hive when mite loadings are low to maintain mite control with regular treatments after that. If you keep putting strips in when the bees are healthy, you get virtually zero bee mortality. 3 to 4 strips per brood box, typically 3 is enough. Pages 7 and 8 in the instruction guide show strip location. We've already covered it anyway, and with a bit of extra labour, they still work out very cheap and very effective, and it's all natural product, which is awesome. You're not having to dispose of plastic when you're pulling the strips out. Colony reinvasion by Varroa in autumn, that's a huge issue, and it results from visits from robber bees, social bees, bees from collapsing colonies. The collapsing colonies are they could be hives that are swarmed in the spring, either your hives or someone else's hives, and they're out in a tree somewhere, and if they've got no treatment for Varroa, they usually collapse late in the autumn. The bees know the hive's going to collapse, so they go to find a new home before it collapses. In the process, they can take a couple of mites with them. Social visits to beehives happens a whole lot more than we ever envisaged. It was highlighted in a conference last year, a study done by Dr. Dennis Van Engelsdorp, and it's shown in a video which you can see for yourself. So that brings us to the subject of RobberGards for the autumn. It's a tool that, it's a device that we have introduced early this year to help control not only robbing, not only wasp issues, but also to help control Varroa issues. So there's these vent holes which the bees can't get through, top and bottom. You can see them fitted to a hive there. That's the widest one, which is 360 millimeters wide on a standard sort of a solid base, and that's got the full width entry open at the top, right along the top. So what happens is your robber bees, your wasps, your social bees, they're guided by scent, and they go straight to the holes at the bottom. They can smell what they want, but they can't get in. They might walk up to the top, but they lose the scent and they go away. And very effective at controlling that, whereas the resident bees, within 24 hours, they find their way in. They often walk up the side and go in like that, and they know pretty quick how to get in there and carry on doing all their normal duties. So there's 3 sizes. That's the 360, the 225, which fits the common hive doctor bases that are in New Zealand, and that's the 153 for the Techniset bases. So this is just a very short video that shows the bees going in and out. So that's just releasing the little eye screws, so they just pop out like that, and then rotate it 180 degrees, and you can just pop it back in, turn the eye screws 90 degrees. It's so quick and easy and simple. And then there's just a little entrance there, 25 millimeters wide. So typically in the autumn, or when you're harvesting the honey, could be February, harvesting the honey, the bees don't need a wide entrance, best to put them on then, and that's going to, the feedback we've had from customers is it greatly helps against wasps, it greatly helps against bees coming in that are spreading Varroa mites. Randy Oliver has talked to me about reinvasion issues in the autumn. He says it's something that all the strips can struggle with, because they're not only trying to control Varroa production in the brood nest, but there's a whole lot coming through the front door as well. And that's why in the autumn, it's absolutely imperative that Varroa numbers are maintained, because that's when they tend to get out of hand. I've had reports from beekeepers that have pulled their strips out end of April. They thought they were all done and dusted for winter, The hives got re-invaded in May, and a lot of them had collapsed by the end of the winter. So it's a serious thing to look at and to work on. So the guard will make a huge difference to that issue. That's showing the 225 on the Hive Doctor base. Same thing, just use little eye screws, as simple to pull it off, put it on, rotate it. That's the smallest one, which is on the Technoset base. We've had some beekeepers use that on the full width base, on a standard base, by just putting a block of wood across here to block the entrance. So they can then just go for the cheapest one. It still works great. So this is a testimonial from Mr. Sean Wakeford. He will tell you about his experiences.
I'm Sean, I'm a beekeeper on the Carpeted Coast. I've got about 30 apiaries, which equate to a little over 300 hives. I do mostly pollination work up in the Bay of Plenty and a little bit of honey locally. For a number of years I've been a little frustrated with winter losses, and last year in particular was rather devastating with about 50% loss. This summer I did a few little differences, the main one being I tried out some entrance reducers and guards that I'd been searching for a number of years, hadn't found anything that I really liked previously, and I'd met Russell and he'd shown me something made out of stainless and I liked the look of it, and so I put it on my hives. It's the biggest single difference. Obviously there's differences of season. This season I haven't seen as many wasps around, and wasps have always been a problem. In February I put in my usual 4 strips of Varroa into each brood nest, put entrance guards on, rubbing guards on, made sure the hives all had feed, packed up and went away for about 10 weeks truck driving for the kiwi fruit harvest. Came back, had a look. I looked at half the apiaries, opened up and started replacing strips in 6 apiaries, and I'm absolutely delighted with near 100% survival rates at the moment. The one notable exception, I got to an apiary, opened them up, discovered that somehow I'd missed putting the Varroa in, and the only thing in there was the summer Pro treatment. Interestingly, the hives hadn't been robbed. The queens and small clusters were there. The brood was devastated with Varroa, but the queens and the bees in small quantities were still there. And I've been able to take good brood and bees from some of the really strong hives and fortify some of those ones in that particular apiary. For me, this year is looking to be the best year I've had in about 10-15 years.
Okay, so that completes the main parts of what we're covering today. But what I would like to say is, if there's commercial beekeepers out there with serious issues with Varroa, I'll be very happy to have a chat with them. It may be best to make a phone appointment which suits both people, to just have a good discussion. We could do a Zoom session if you wanted to include your staff, to just cover off what's been happening and what the potential solutions are. I don't know everything, but it's amazing what you pick up when you talk to hundreds of commercial beekeepers and we share information. It's awesome that we can build up like a collection of tips and points of what can help in situations. So that's it for today, and hey, thank you very much for watching this video.